Hey leaders, thanks so much for watching again. I want to say thank you before we dive into our curriculum this week for everything that you guys do in ministry. We are rounding out a phenomenal summer. We had a blast on our mission trips and camps. Students have grown deeper than they've ever gone before because of the way that you stepped into their lives in the middle of summer, talking about the one big story of God. And it was just phenomenal to watch that happen. So thank you for being that kind of a leader and mentor in our students' lives. This week, we're looking forward to the start of school on Monday. And so because of that, we're in this series called Chaos. And last week, we looked at the chaos that causes stress. And what do we do, specifically what do our teenagers do to relieve that stress that happens in our lives? Because stress is good, but too much stress causes distress. And that's when we need to release it to something. And we said, well, we release it to God. Now, this week, as students are looking to get back to school, there's all sorts of stressful questions going through their minds. Am I prepared? Am I good enough? Who are the friends that I'm going to find approval with and be a part of when I walk back into the school on Monday morning? Who are the people that I will belong with? And that's what we're talking about this week, because approval drives us to do some crazy things sometimes. I just want people to like me, or I want people to hang out with me and be around me. That's what I was looking for when I was a middle school and high school student. And I think if we're being honest, that's where you were too. We wanted friends who accepted us and thought we were cool and we could hang out with them. Now, approval can be a good thing, but our desire for it can easily become our number one source of chaos in life. Nothing creates stress like wondering whether or not other people approve of us. And without realizing it, it becomes so easy to let our life be controlled by our desire for approval. We want it so badly that we'll compromise ourselves, our beliefs, our values. We'll do anything so that we know that we're approved. All of our hopes and everything we believe in goes to being approved by others, and we make ourselves miserable in the process and enter in chaos at that moment. That's where we see things just getting jumbled up and becoming chaotic. Now, most students who are caught up in the chaos of wanting approval are exhausted. Now, at this point, we may think, well, the solution is to simply just stop caring about what other people think of us, which would be easier. That seems like it would take the stress away, but there are two big problems with that. The first problem is it's nearly impossible. On the outside, we shrug it off and say, oh, it's not a big deal. It doesn't bother me. I don't care what they think about me. But pretending the chaos doesn't exist rarely makes the chaos go away. And the second thing is it makes you a jerk. Now, let's say you actually talk yourself into truly not caring about what people think. You may feel less pressure for a little while. But if you don't care what anybody else thinks, doesn't that mean you only care about what you think? So it clearly doesn't help us to lie to ourselves and say that everything is fine when it's not. And it doesn't help us to become people who are cold and insensitive to others. So what do we do with that? Now, our scripture this week is from a book of Proverbs, and it's a book in the Bible that's dedicated to giving us direction in our day-to-day lives. Most of it was written by a man named Solomon, who the Bible describes as the wisest man who ever lived. What an incredible source to look at as we're looking for wisdom. He was a brilliant king, very rich, very powerful, a great leader. The people loved him, but above all that, he was very, very smart. The kind of man you want to get advice from. If you're not much of a Bible reader, Proverbs is a great place for our students to start, or for you to start. And if you ever wonder, what should I do about this situation, Proverbs is a great place to go for answers. Now, our scripture is from Proverbs chapter 29, verse 25, and it starts by saying this: to fear anyone will prove to be a snare. Now, Solomon isn't saying fear like you're afraid for your life. He's saying fear in a sense that you're anxious or worried or stressed about not being approved. He's talking about giving others a sense of power and control over you that was meant to fear them. And when we live desperate for others' approval or afraid of losing their approval, we're living often in fear. We are giving them a power and control they were never meant to have. Solomon says doing this is a snare and trap, and it lures you in, it baits you. It's so enticing that if you're not careful, it'll snare you into compromising yourself. It'll trap you into living away with overwhelming insecurity. It'll trap you into consistently stressing about what other people think of you. Your emotional well-being, your attitude, your perspective on life will hinge on what other people's thoughts and feelings are of you, and you'll be stuck. In other words, you're giving that power to other people about your approval or not. It'll trap you in the chaos, and sometimes you don't even notice it because it's so subtle. But thankfully, Solomon doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just give us the bad news. He offers us a way out of this trap. He doesn't just tell us what will get us in trouble, but he also tells us how to stay away from trouble. He says, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. Instead of being so worried and controlled by what other people think of you, trade that in for trusting the Lord. In other words, the power of trusting God trumps the power of approval from other people. If living in consistent anxiety is equal to a trap, you know what trusting God is equal to? It's freedom. It's peace. That's what God offers when we buy into trusting God with our approval. It starts with this mindset. What God thinks is greater than what they think. It means getting the power and control back from other people and handing that power and control to God for our lives. It's deciding that no matter what is going on or who else is there, God's approval matters most. And when we do that, God invites us into freedom. Trusting God is recognizing the situations where you could get caught in the snare and acknowledging and inviting God in instead. Give God control. Make the choice to believe that what God thinks is greater than what they think. And you know what you experience in return? Freedom and peace. The fear of man controls us, but trusting in God sets us free. It frees us to be who God created you to be. It's life-changing to walk into a day, a job, a date, your home, our students' schools, to invite God in to those places by saying, God, will you help me avoid the chaos in these places? And I have to be honest with you, this isn't just important for now for high school and middle school students. It's important because the pressure to win other people's approval will always be there. And figuring out now, making a decision to step out of that chaos now, could literally change the rest of our students' lives. Now, as they head out on Sunday, I want you to think and ask your students, whose approval could be a snare for you? What would it look like to elevate pleasing God over pleasing them? What would it look like to decide that what God thinks is greater than what they think? It'll change the decisions you make. It'll change the way that you view your relationship with God. And most importantly, it'll change the way that you seek approval from the world around you. And that's what we're talking about this week, is we're heading back to school. We're heading back into all these questions of who am I going to be with? Who's the friends that are going to greet me? We can know that we're approved and we belong to God. And once we know that, my hunch is that the other people fall into place around us. And they'll be healthy people. They'll be people that lift us up and don't tear us down. And that's my prayer for our students as we get back into the school year. So if you're on our Nona campus this Sunday night, we'll see you at 4:45 for our leader meeting. We'll pray. We'll share some wins. We'll talk about some stuff coming up. Can't wait to see you there out at our 360 campus. You guys are doing a phenomenal job out there with ministry on Sunday mornings. I love you guys out there. Omar will meet with you guys and share some prayer requests as well. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you later, guys. Bye.